So.
Hey, Head of Communication here at CD Projekt Red, and I will be your host for today as we take a deep dive into Cyberpunk 2077. We're going to be showing you a video with new gameplay and new gameplay mechanics, and afterwards I'll be joined by three of our developers, Miles, Philip and Pavel, as we take a closer look at some of the things you're going to see and hopefully answer some of your questions. On behalf of everybody at CD Projekt Red, we're incredibly excited to share this new look at Cyberpunk 2077 with you.
Hey V, you alright?
Let's do this.
Sieht doch geil aus. Cyberpunk Reveal Stream hier heute.
Okay. What now?
Barré.
Johnny?
Barré. On a le plancher.
Das sieht doch fucking geil aus.
Where are we?
Our BBS, Data Fortress. Bridge to the deep net. Beyond, there are no borders. Beyond the black wall.
Welcome to the Cyberpunk 2077 2019 Deep Dive video. In last year's gameplay reveal, we showed you our vision for the world of Cyberpunk 2077, its quests, and visual design. This year, we'd like to give you a peek at some of the playstyles you'll be able to adopt as your character progresses through the story.
Here goes nothing.
You're about to see sequences embodying two distinct approaches to playing Cyberpunk. We'll show you a strong solo build, that is, a character who focuses on employing blunt force and taking instant action, and a netrunner build, a playstyle taking frequent advantage of stealth tactics, hacking, and battlefield control achieved using malicious software. Additionally, you'll learn more about Pacifica, one of the game's districts, two gangs, the Animals and the Voodoo Boys, and you'll see glimpses of Johnny Silverhand, the digital construct who haunts our main character, V. A word of caution. Given that the video covers a section of the game deep into the main storyline, we have edited the footage to contain as few spoilers as possible. Be aware that the gameplay as presented does reveal characters and locations you'll see while playing the game's main story arc. So watch at your own discretion.
Gerne, gerne, gerne.
Where are we headed? This way.
In this video, you'll experience a segment of a quest from the middle of the game. We're currently in Pacifica, one of Night City's 6 unique districts.
No Pacifica well. Nah. You guys aren't exactly great at rolling out the welcome mat for outsiders.
It was designed to be a tourist hotspot within the city. As you can see, this didn't pan out. When uncertainty struck the global economy, investors pulled their funding, leaving most establishments unfinished. It's one of those places where expectations and reality collided, resulting in a heap of disappointment. Ongoing gang wars plague this part of the city. Outsiders don't come here if they don't have to. Even by Night City's standards, it's dangerous to those unfamiliar with it. Taking a casual stroll here would not be a good idea. A fast motorbike or armor-plated car would be the safer option. places like this have their advantages. If you're in need of rare goods or illegal cyberware, Pacifica's bustling local markets are a good place to start your search.
Und das hat man alles schon auf der E3 gesehen, in
The
diesem
Grand
kleinen
Imperial
Mini-Teaser-Ding.
Mall is a whole other story. It was one of the last developments in Pacifica to lose its funding. Until recently it stood vacant, but now a gang called the Animals has moved in for reasons unknown.
Something's not going right for the big guy up top.
And that's what we need to learn in order to earn the trust of the Voodoo Boys, the Animals' rivals.
What the hell?
Could fucking tell me what you plan to do first.
You take job. You do what I say. So you check in now.
Of the many gangs in Cyberpunk 2077, the Voodoo Boys are the most skilled at using the net.
You have now seen the Rezo Agwe, our subnet.
Why? What for?
You are my vessel now. Through Agwe, I see what you see, hear what you hear.
This mysterious gang of highly skilled netrunners has close ties to the local Haitian community.
You are V? We have been waiting.
Haitians settled in Pacifica in the 2060s after natural disasters struck their island and forced them to emigrate en masse. The Voodoo Boys gang formed around this same time, though at a smaller scale. Now the gang effectively rules Pacifica. The Voodoo Boys don't usually work with outsiders. Lucky for us, it seems they're prepared to make an exception this time.
Mr. Hand sent me. He said you got merc work needs doing.
Still, to earn their trust, we need to prove our worth. Placide, one of the Voodoo Boys' higher-ups, has offered us a mission. We need to infiltrate the Grand Imperial Mall, currently occupied by the Voodoo Boys' deadly enemy, a gang called the Animals.
2035-07. 3 seconds before, poof, the camionette. We try to learn where the camionette come from.
The Animals are not your normal gang. Their presence in Pacifica is suspicious. They value might above all else and wear melee combat implants to raise their prowess in combat. Their beverage of choice is juice, a potent strength and speed-enhancing concoction. As sought-after bouncers, they're usually dispersed throughout town. As skilled street-level business types, they've cornered the market in illegal substances and underground live-or-die prize fights. When they converge in one spot, it's for something big. It's then they appoint the fastest and strongest among them as their ad hoc leader. In this case, it's a woman named Sasquatch.
Said you wanted my vet.
Inside.
No. As far as I remember, you said no bone brain buffaloes on steroids. Afraid that's the cost of doing biz.
This is the tech Placide was talking about. It seems non-standard for the Animals. And this is where we come in. Getting to the van won't be easy, but we're more than qualified for the job, which we can complete in one of many ways. The character creation in Cyberpunk 2077 is the kind you'd expect from a full-fledged RPG. You start by choosing your past, important because this unlocks special options at important story junctures. You also fully customize your character using a deep customization system that spans not only your look and style, but also your abilities. Cyberpunk 2077 does not feature fixed classes. Instead, it has a fluid class system that allows players to mix and match a wide range of abilities to suit their playstyles. You can create a strong solo character, a skilled netrunner, or any other hybrid class you can imagine. Let's see how a solo playstyle in Cyberpunk 2077 might work. Solos prefer a direct approach. They use guns and might to get things done. So let's wreak some havoc. With our enhanced strength, we can strip this turret of its weapons and give the Animals a taste of their own medicine. This is how a player investing in solo abilities might live out their Terminator power fantasy. Enhanced strength lets us force open doors, or grab enemies to use as human shields. We also gain access to powerful melee combat cyberware. So even someone as fast and strong as Sasquatch, the leader of this group of animals, is not impossible to beat for a solo. But Sasquatch has a different game plan. She's out to jack in and hack us. Let's see how this plays out.
Ready for some fun? Proceed. What's going on?
Trying to scramble you. Deal with him.
Da ist es Leave Now, wer die Bilder kennt.
It's our choice if we want to finish her off or spare her. You're Cyberpunk, your rules.
Alter!
If you'd rather sneak around, hide, and strike from the shadows, no problem. Just develop your net running skills to get around obstacles or hack into enemy tech to have it do the dirty work for you. Net running abilities mean hacking skills that let us use our cyber deck to breach access points. For this, we fill the buffer of our cyber deck with a string of instructions represented by these letters and numbers. Matching the instructions for basic access grants us control of devices connected to this network. The more instructions we match, the more control we gain over elements in the network. We can hack our way through in numerous ways. A quick hack may grant us control of the security camera. Another one should let us tweak the difficulty of the training bot to create a distraction. With our nanowire, we can even hack this guy's implants from a distance.
Was?
In this world, almost everything is connected to a local network. And that means it can be hacked.
Ours is a wolf.
Which brings us back to cyberspace. You don't get to do anything in the net unnoticed. There's always someone watching. It could be corpos, or even worse, it could be Netwatch. And that is exactly the case here.
Who is they?
Netwatch. They always out to fuck us.
Netwatch and the Voodoo Boys are like fire and ice. The first of these wants to maintain the old order and protect people from AI anarchy originating from beyond the Black Wall. The Voodoo Boys want to establish contact with the free AIs. They believe this will enable their boundless expansion on the net and grant them the upper hand over Netwatch. Netwatch sees this as the end of the world. Both are right.
Whoa, hey.
How you deal with the Netwatch agent is entirely up to you. Do we side with the gang? Choosing to be on Netwatch's bad side is never wise. But can we really trust the Voodoo Boys?
You set me up!
As you can see, we have many possible options. But in each case, we take a risk.
Think I'll just stick to my plan.
Out well. In the world of cyberpunk, few things go as planned. And that was just a glimpse of how complex the branching storyline in Cyberpunk 2077 can get. Every decision you make will have consequences. Your choices will shape how the world reacts to you and affect your relationships with those around you. One of those relationships is special. Ever heard of Johnny Silverhand? A rebel rocker boy who will be your companion throughout your adventure in Night City?
Come on, really think they give a rat's dick how you look?
Like everyone in Cyberpunk 2077, he has his own agenda. You'll decide if he'll be your ally or your enemy. And that chip in your head, the one thanks to which Johnny lives inside your mind, well, that's a story for another time.
Fucking geil. Heilige Scheiße.
Welcome back. Now, following the deep dive, there is an awful lot to talk about. So I found 3 of the very best. Oh, you look so happy. But I think just in case people aren't super familiar with Cyberpunk 2077, why don't you introduce yourself one by one so everybody knows who they're listening to.
Hey, I'm Miles. I'm one of the level designers at CD Projekt Red.
Hello, I'm Pavel, and I'm a lead of the Quest team, and it's a great pleasure to be talking to you.
So I'm Philip, and I'm one of the Quest designers, so I work really closely with Pavel over here.
Oh, thank you guys for being my my participants in this video. Let's get started because the last demo we saw took place in Watson. This time we're in Pacifica. They're very different, and that's super important for Night City, that it feels different. So what do you need to consider as a level designer when you're building a place like this?
All right, we are diving right into it.
Let's go. People want to know answers.
Okay, I'm going. So, from a level design point of view, for us it's really important to create these districts, the 6 ones that we have in Night City, to be as different as possible without making it unbelievable, right? And we sort of orient ourselves around sort of how we approached, let's say, Skellige and Novigrad No Man's Land in The Witcher 3. So we're sort of aiming for a very noticeable difference. And this has multiple purposes, right? First off, we want to enhance the variety in the game, right? It would be kind of boring just to have a lot of the same throughout the entire city. We have one cityscape, so we need to create this kind of variety, and that's actually a really fun creative process as well. And secondly, we need it as a navigational tool. That means that when you as a player move around the city, you should know where you are simply by looking around. And thankfully there's a lot of lore that we can sort of dissect and make our own that helps us around, but we also add our own sort of twists to the whole thing, right? So in terms of Pacifica, we know that it's pretty fucked up place, if I can say so. And what I mean with that is that it's pretty noticeable that it's almost post-apocalyptic, right? The district has a rich history that caused it to basically fall into disarray after it was initially meant to become the city's crown jewel of tourism. But clearly, as you can see from the footage, that actually didn't quite work out that way. And now you'll actually see things like burning cars on the streets, right? And it's very deserted. So much unlike Watson that we showed last year, where the streets are bustling with people, here there's way less. Because it's simply a very dangerous place that you don't want to really go if you don't have to. And again, that's one of these things that once you enter the district from the rest of Night City, you'll actually notice that, right? And of course, all the destruction going on and all of the, suffering and pain.
Our favorite
and
things.
Violence, as it were.
So what kind of things are exclusive to Pacifica? Because you don't want people to just come for the quest and then leave and that's it. You want people to keep coming back to this district. So what can people find there?
This is what I meant when I said it's a very fun process to think of these kind of things, because these sort of characteristics that we give the district directly sort of birth the things that you can find there, right? And amongst the destruction, you'll still find people living there. Right, Pacifica is inhabited by a large Haitian community, and each district sort of has a kind of dominant gang who has taken over there. In the case of Pacifica, that would be the Voodoo Boys. And unlike the Maelstromers that we saw last year, the Voodoo Boys are actually deeply ingrained within the community that lives there, and they actually They're not your typical sort of street gang in the sense that they don't really bring a lot of gunpowder to fight themselves, but they actually specialize in cyberspace. They're obsessed with the mysteries of cyberspace. They've sort of almost made it their own religion, if you will. And they have the reputation of being the best netrunners that you can find in Night City. And it's a very cool gang that V, of course, our main protagonist, will interact with in several ways. How? You will have to find out. And I mean, that's just one of many, many different ways you'll really experience Pacifica. As I said, all of these things together, the culture, the visuals, the architecture, and the history, really, will be very distinct to the district. At the same time, we're of course trying really hard to not make it feel disconnected, right? There's always a link. It should always be believable. That's one of the sort of core pillars that we build everything on. But this will make it for a very unique experience when you delve an adventure in this district compared to others.
And when looking at the stories that we'll be telling in this exact district, we always make sure that it always fits to the environment, to what we want to build. So, you know, the street stories that you will find, their side quests, and the main quest that is actually placed there, it always tells the story of the community, of the people, of the characters that are living there. And the Haitian community, right, they arrived actually in Night City because of the environmental changes that were happening in the world. Haiti is actually completely flooded, and they have left it. They arrived to Night City to build the district that Miles just talked about. And
das ist tatsächlich relativ progressiv.
Were left out at the moment when the corporations withdrawn all the funding from the Pacifica. They were left there, and they built their own community there, and they gave the seed. They become the seed for all the stories that we're telling there. So as a player, when you're like investing, meeting all those characters and talking to them, you actually find out and learn more about them, you know, through the quests.
Perfect, but let's talk about the mall we just saw in the deep dive video, because that's not linear.
No.
So how do you design a non-linear level? You've got the building, you're thinking, right, well, the person who's playing on their game, they might have a more techie style of playthrough, but this person might want to go in all guns blazing. How do you design levels for all these different play styles? Anything's possible.
Yes, yeah, we do give the player a lot of different tools to use as he goes through a level, and that makes designing these things quite complex, I will say. But, you know, just to sort of understand our mentality, I can actually, I'll attempt, maybe you'll help me out with this one, to go back in our development, well, sometime. and to really sort of, we came up with this example to sort of establish this kind of mentality that we wanted to have when we approached our level designs and the way we do our encounters, right? And the example was rather simple. The goal was for a player to go from one room to another, but the main way to go from that one room to another would be sort of like a door. And be it through like a scanner or a device, it doesn't really matter for the example actually. Going through this door would ultimately result in the player losing his weapons, but the task was to actually kill a person on the other side of that door, right? Now, we use this sort of example to sit down and think, okay, how will we do this in all these kind of different play styles, right? So perhaps, you know, one way would be to, you know, convince a guard that would be stationed next to the door, just let you through, right? Through like sort of like a social kind of path, or you could take the guy out, take, I don't know, like a pass that would enable you to go through the door without actually letting go of your gun. Maybe if you are invested as a melee character, it actually doesn't really matter to you. You just walk through the door and then punch the guy on the other side into like a pile of blood. Or maybe as a kind of hacker type of character, you try to find a way to breach the network, to disable the device, right, the scanner that would prevent your weapons from usage, allowing you to move through and then use your guns on whatever your target is. Maybe as a kind of fast solo kind of character, you'd be able to jump out of the window onto a windowsill, double jump to the, you know, like a balcony, and then enter through the window there. And the list goes on and on with examples that we try to come up for this kind of door. And it's sort of, again, it's just to showcase how we sort of think about these levels, right? As you know, putting in a problem that the player has to solve. And we give him a lot of different tools and possibilities to solve this issue or bypass it in their own way. And that is how we're hoping to really create an experience for the player that they feel inherently is their own, right? They came up with a solution given the systems that we gave them, and they really get to feel like the badass cyberpunk V that we want them to feel like.
It's actually also a lot of fun to work on this from a story perspective, because, you know, as an example on the Wild Hunt, we were already working with very non-linear stories, but now we also have this non-linear gameplay approach, and for us it was always really important to have these choices and consequences, and we did them in the story. You know, anything should matter somehow, But now we can also say, okay, players have all of these different choices to solve a situation. So of course, there should also sometimes be some consequences. And not just on the gameplay side, how you solve it, but of course, you know, the story should react to it. Do I just run into this room and kill a few guys? Or do I, you know, choose a super different approach? Sometimes this can now open up a completely new way to go through a quest. So, you know, it actually, I think it added to this whole layer of non-linearity. It added quite a few, let's say, more things we have to do. But the thing is, it is a challenge for us, but it's actually a really fun challenge. It's actually really cool to come up with all these ideas. And the thing is also, our quests are iterated upon a lot. So as an example, you know, quest designers, of course, we play them ourselves. Pavel as our lead plays them again. Directors play them. And also, you know, most importantly, QA plays our quests a lot, and our QA team has really, really good ideas. So, you know, they always think, okay, what do I think right now? What would I want to do in this situation? And then we often communicate, and this is how some of the best ideas are actually created, just through going through these missions over and over again, and always finding some new ways to approach them and some new ways to, you know, find interesting consequences, what to happen afterwards.
Yeah, and that I think sort of ties up with a whole philosophy of a game, which is the freedom. And we have a freedom on the story layer, and maybe I don't want to talk about it too much, not to spoil it, but but it ties up with the gameplay very well, with like the way how the levels are constructed, and with branching gameplay, as Philip just explained, because player has freedom playing the game. You build your character the way you want, and you play the way you want, and you want the player to feel this choice, you know, that he's doing depending of, you know, how skills he's assigning, what weapons he or she is picking, and all that, and it all comes together as like, you know, fulfilling this ultimate like cyberpunk fantasy.
So in the demo, we obviously saw the bike. There was a little mention of the heavy armor car, but can you tell us a little bit more about the kinds of vehicles that will be in Cyberpunk 2077?
I can tell you a little bit about it. So there's of course many different kinds of vehicles, because we want to create a real open city, a, you know, city that makes sense in the year 2077. So there will be all kinds of vehicles, and of course there's also, you know, society is very different. So, you know, we also have different art styles that correspond with the different parts of society. So we have the art style called entropy. So as an example, you might see vehicles that are just very useful. They're made to just bring a person from A to B, or, you know, they're made to do a job. And of course, but, you know, the player can choose to have them as well, especially if, you know, the player might not have that much money yet. But there's also, you know, super luxury high-end vehicles on the other side of the coin. So of course, you know, you as a player are only limited by what you can afford.
That's like real life.
Yeah, life is like
that's
cyberpunk.
what we strive for.
But yeah, you know, we try to thrive for variety. So, you know, we also looked like, what are the kinds of vehicles players would want to have in a cyberpunk game? So, you know, we don't just have cars, we of course also have bikes, like our very own Yaiba Kusanagi here, one of my favorites. It's a very, very cool bike. And there's some, let's say, surprise vehicles that are still to be seen in Cyberpunk that I don't want to spoil here, but I would say something very special that's also dear to my heart.
Now I'm really intrigued.
But of course also, let's say, the super highest echelon of people in that city, they also have access to AVs, so flying cars, which is something that you as a player, you're not part of that world, but through specific story moments, you might get to, you know, ride in them sometimes. So, you know, we want to give you a few different experiences. But yeah, you can also, of course, you know, you have your garage where your apartment is, so you can also have your own vehicle that you store and that you can call to yourself. So, you know, you can't call your vehicle Roach if you want to. It's all up to you, but it will be your very own.
I wonder how many of these cars are going to be called Roach now that you've mentioned it. So Night City is massive, and that's like a point we're really trying to make. It's a huge, huge city. And you kind of want people to explore it by foot, right? You could just walk like from point A to point B if that's what you want, or drive.
You could, but probably you would get pretty tired because it's a pretty big place, so you will have to walk a lot. So the thing is, you know, we do not have loading screens while exploring the city. It's a completely seamless place. You can go, you know, wherever you want. And of course, Night City is a very dense place, so there's lots to see on your way. But the thing is also, you know, as with all things, we want to give players a choice. So of course, there's the option to fast travel. But the thing is actually, the way we're designing the city, we actually kind of feel like, even when we're playing it ourselves, that fast travel is often just When I play the game, I don't want to fast travel. I want to explore the city because we actually try to give you so many interesting things, so many places that tell a story that look interesting, where you have something to do, where you can interact with things that just something new for you at every corner. So I personally don't fast travel a lot. I just drive my bike and I put on some nice music and I have a good time. But of course, you know, it's possible. And the thing is also, we actually have proper city planners working here that actually are planning out Night City and, you know, how the traffic would work in that city and how it would actually make the most sense, how a city like that would actually grow organically and, you know, how it would flow, how the traffic would flow through there. So it's actually really interesting to also just have that part of game development now as part of, you know, Cyberpunk 2077, because this will be very important for how people actually get to explore it themselves.
To make the city feel alive.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so in The Witcher, everybody who's played The Witcher knows those question marks on the map, those points of interest. You dreamt about them when you were at work, you just thought about them. You can't walk past them. So what will we be sort of looking at for Cyberpunk? You know, what are those things that are going to be all-consuming us, so we are probably not paying attention to the main story? We're going to be like, oh, I've got to go do that first, and I can't go and do this until I've done that one over there. What will we be finding?
So in Night City, you actually really want to tie it into the world. So as an example, most districts have a so-called fixer. Like you might know from our gameplay demo from a year ago, there's Dexter Deshawn. And people like this, they can give you jobs that also fit the specific district you're in. So if when you enter a district and you're kind of known as a mercenary who's doing certain things for money, fixers might contact you and they have some jobs for you. And then these jobs, as an example, they can be street stories. And they show up on your map and you get an icon so you know, okay, this is this kind of street story. And we always want to put some interesting story to them, because after Wild Hunt, we actually founded a completely new team, the Open World team, which is actually creating some amazing content to actually fill this world with things that are meaningful. So, we actually want to make this that you can do many also smaller things around the city, but they're actually all cool and unique in their own way. And one cool thing is also, of course, they appear on your map, but the map in the game is actually properly immersive. It's that really, really cool looking point cloud version of Night City. And you can see the tasks from your fixer there. But the cool thing is actually, because you're a character in Cyberpunk, you're V, and you actually have this information. So it's not just the player seeing them, it's actually your character seeing them as well, because it's all part of the world. So we want to give you this full immersion.
Yeah, it's actually really, really cool for us that with the street stories and all the other content, we're essentially sort of giving him like almost our Witcher 3 side quest treatment, in the sense that even simple tasks can be fun and exciting if we pack them up in a cool story and root them within the world, right? We can use these street stories to expand further on how life in Night City and the world of Cyberpunk in general works. And sometimes this might even be a better staging ground than the main story itself, right? Where just like, hey, let's see how everyday life works in this kind of aspect, from this perspective, in this scenario. And actually that's, again, like for us, that's a lot of fun. And it's a very exciting process. And I hope that when players play it at the end, that they will actually find that it sort of enriches their experience, because they always kind of have this impression like, hey, wow, no matter where I go, things are actually worked out, right? It's never just a simple sort of task of, hey, do things, but there's always a reason, there's always an understanding of why you're doing things. And even in those few scenarios where it might seem a bit more, oblivious, you'll usually find that, there's more to it that meets the eye.
Yeah, and one interesting thing about those street stories is also that, our main story is, of course, your own personal journey through Night City, but the street stories are actually, because, you play a mercenary who's trying to carve their way through the city. This is actually your job. So this is actually the role you now inhabit in this city. So actually you're part of that system through these street stories and through working with fixers. So it's actually this whole different way of playing, the game and feeling immersed in the city.
Can't wait to lose my life to them. So in the deep dive, we can see that the character has 3 sort of origins that we can pick. I mean, what are they and how do they actually affect the gameplay?
Oh, okay.
You're like, yes, let's go.
Yeah, okay. I'll go into my 50-minute answer. Okay, so we actually call them life paths. Those are the origin stories that player can pick, and it's actually 3 of them. So you can be a street kid, you can be a nomad, or you can be a corpo. Now, each of them actually defines the beginning of the story for the player. So you start in a completely different way than other life paths, and you are slowly introduced into that story. You know a different people. You're in a completely different place in life, you're in a different place in Night City, and your story slowly, you get involved into that whole thing with Chip and Johnny Silverhand, and eventually, you will land there. But you actually start off being a completely different person. Now, what is important with that is we actually take that through the whole game, and you as a player, you can actually associate yourself with like nomads, you can associate yourself with corporate people, or you can be a part of the streets, and it's really up to you, what path you want to pick through the main story, and we did our best in the quest team to like support all those like 3, I would say, main ways to go through the story. And of course player can like mix and match anytime, any way he really wants, or she really wants, but it's something that we take from the very beginning till the very end. And what's important there is when you're in the scenes with the characters, so when you're discussing things, you can actually use those things. So if you're a corpo and you know how the corporations work, what are their normal methods, what's the deal with them, you actually can use this knowledge and sometimes get something more. You can actually unlock side branches in the dialogues, and you can unlock side branches in the whole quest sometimes. And this is a bit exciting, I would say. It's something like the way how we to make sure that the player can role play their character, to become that person. And in the demo that we have shown in the recording, you can see this moment when you choose that character that you are becoming later. And the characters that you are meeting in the main story, they are also representing those different groups. So in the first demo a year ago, we have shown Meredith Stout, a person, she is a high-class corporate woman from Militech. She has a lot of power, also a lot of responsibility, and you are on her way. And you can see, how that interaction looks like. So when you're from corporation, maybe there's something you can do a bit more with her, and that goes also for others, for nomads and for street kids.
One of the nice things is actually also that, you're not bound to stick, let's say, with the
Aber irgendwie
corporate
ist es
or
nicht
with the
viel
streets.
Neues,
So
was
as an
die jetzt
example,
erzählen, außer dass es
I
diese
can give you
3
an example. I
Playstyles
started as a
gibt.
street kid
Aber das ist halt nicht so, ich
game,
sagen würde,
and I
wow,
always, I know I
überrascht
had my
mich
knowledge,
jetzt. Das
but
habe ich
then
irgendwie auch
I played through the
erwartet.
story and I noticed like, I kind of like these corporate characters. I like that life. So, I can just, betray the streets and snuggle up with the corporates. But, this is kind of the role-playing freedom we want to give. But, as always, this can also have consequences for you.
So anyone who's played the original tabletop version of Cyberpunk is used to the idea of assigning attribute points to create a character. Now, in the deep dive video we just saw, we got a little glimpse of that screen. You could see the points and the different things. So help me understand how that works and how you gain those points.
So as a player, you build your character at the beginning, assigning those attribute points, and they define like the core characteristics of your character. So how much body strength you have, or how much reflexes you have, or how cool you are. That's one of the interesting.
Man hat das ja schon mal redesigned gesehen, das sah ja schon mal anders aus im letzten Gameplay-Video.
As you have those attributes, you also have skills. The skills define a bit more interesting proficiencies for you as a player, what you can do. And for instance, one of those skills is assassination or the cold blood. And maybe I'll stick to the cold blood to explain a bit more. So this is a skill that allows the player to survive in a really tough situation. So at the moment, you get a lot of damage, then the cold blood skill kicks in thanks to your cool stat. It kicks in and gives you a boost in damage, and then as a player you can survive and so on. But then using that skill, so you sort of like use by learning, like using that skill, you can actually get better, pump up levels there, and you can get different perks. Now what's interesting there, you can actually give completely different perks to the skill that you have. And here I think I could use the example of the athletics attribute. So the athletics is a way for us to move dead bodies. So as a player, you can basically pick up the dead body that you have just basically killed, and pick it up and like stuff it into the fridge or in a trash bin. Now as a player, you normally slow down when you're moving around with the bodies. But if you have added special perks to your athletic skill, you can now run with the dead body. So because you are more athletic, you can do that. And those are like 3 levels of complexity in our character, in building the character we have. You have the attributes, you have the skills, and then you assign perks to it. And those 3 come together to allow you to create your own amazing character that you want to play at.
A lot of people think this is maybe how cool you look and it's all about the jacket you're wearing, but the cool stat is not style-based, is it?
Well, you know, this is cyberpunk, so being cool is of course very important. But the actual cool stat really means how cool you are under pressure, how much you have control over your body. So, you know, are there people shooting at me and I'm holding my gun like that? Probably not very cool. So this is, you know, this is the kind of thing that cool actually controls. But of course, you know, if you want to play a character that's actually cool, you have your choices, right? You can wear your nice leather jacket. And of course, you know, like in real life, also depends on how you talk to people. And that's of course also the choice of you as a player.
He just might freak out under gunfire.
Yeah.
Like, cool on the surface, but not so much when push comes to shove.
Happens sometimes.
So in the deep dive, we saw a quick clip of the inventory screen. It looks like a proper old school RPG screen, you know, with the little blocks of the system. And I know the community wants to hear more about what they can expect. So tell us more, Miles.
Oh, I will. Now, of course, like how I always say is, you know, in Cyberpunk, the inventory screen is, of course, where we manage our items, right? But most importantly, in Cyberpunk, it's where we also manage our style. And just as Philip just touched on, you know, like it's really important for us to be able, for you to be able to realize your character, and that, of course, comes in the character creation, but also the way you dress your character, right? We're pretty much aware that there's sort of this, in most RPGs, there's this common sort of disconnect between the stats on an item and the looks. While we can go into details here, let's just say we're aware of this sort of, you know, conflict, I guess, of interest sometimes. So we're looking into how you would be able to make your character still look cool despite having the
Das Problem ist eher von dieser Diskussion hier, die ist zwar ganz spannend und interessant, aber
the whole role-playing aspect goes even further because we'll have some customization options not only for the way you look like, but also your guns, right? In the inventory, you will of course decide what kind of weapon.
Es ist aber nichts Neues, sage ich mal, so was Bahnbrechendes irgendwie. Es ist halt nur die Bestätigung dafür, dass es ein relativ gutes RPG wird. Also ich habe jetzt nicht den Eindruck, dass ich jetzt hier auch betrogen werde, sondern dass man genau das bekommt, was man auch erwartet irgendwo. Das mag ja sein. Aber ja, ich habe jetzt nicht das Gefühl, das weitergucken zu müssen, weil ich irgendwie nichts Neues erfahre. Das wirkt als sehr durchgeskriptet und nicht wirklich so, dass da jetzt Interaktion mit der Community herrscht. Ich glaube, an der Stelle breche ich das einfach mal ab. Ich freue mich auf das Spiel zwar trotzdem, aber ich brauche mir das jetzt nicht alles ansehen, um zu verstehen, dass es eigentlich ein sehr, sehr gutes Spiel wird. Deswegen, das war's.